My lovely, stingy students. Not all of you. Just the ones who are not giving me likes. No, I'm joking with you. Don't cry. My lovely, beloved students. All right. Minna, always late. Minna, you told me you're gonna be late only on Mondays. In the previous sessions, we spoke about writing. We covered different parts of writing. We spoke about the writing components, the answer sheet, question types, time management, scoring and marking criteria. I wrote with you a Band 9 essay and a Band 9 report and a Band 9 letter. Today, I'm gonna tell you how to study writing by yourself. And then after I finish, we're gonna move to the second part of today's class, which is the fourth section of the IELTS exam, which is the speaking part that most of the students do not study for because they just think that it's gonna be easy. I'm just gonna talk like I talk in real life. Yeah. But let's start with the writing part. How to study alone for the writing section. Look at the photo. Isa, we are sick of this photo. This is the fourth time you're repeating the photo. Yeah. Because I want you to understand and to remember this photo. Solo studying. Write, revise, and watch the scores rise. Write, revise, and your score is going to rise. In other words, grow. In other words, increase dramatically, drastically, or it could skyrocket. How to study writing, Isa? Because, in the listening and in the reading parts, you can study them very easily. Well, not really study them very easily. You can practice listening and reading by yourself. Why? Because you have the answer key. You have answers. You can compare your answers to the answer key. If it's right, this means you're doing a good job. If it's wrong, this means you're doing a bad job. But when it comes to writing and speaking, there's no right or wrong answers. Your answer could be right and it could be wrong. Depends on the way you say it or the way you write it. So for you to practice writing and speaking, it is a little bit different to practicing reading and listening. Okay, Isa, how can I study and practice writing by myself? Number one, imagine you're William Shakespeare and you know nothing about rocket science. You're going to be able to write about rocket science? No, you cannot. You cannot write anything about rocket science. All right. So the first thing that you have to do to practice writing is to learn how to generate ideas. Isa, is this only for essays? No, it's not just for essays. It's also for letters and it's also for reports. But Isa, you told us that reports, you do not really have to come up with ideas. Yeah, but you have to practice how to generate and to come up with the trends, differences, and features. You have to keep looking at different essays. You have to keep coming up with different ideas based on different topics. You have to keep looking at different letters. You have to keep coming up with different ideas, 2 ideas for each bullet point. You have to keep looking at different reports. You have to keep finding out and trying to identify the main trends, features, and differences. Practice, practice, practice. Yeah? What are the advantages and disadvantages of spending a lot of money on space exploration? What are the advantages and disadvantages of spending money on building residential areas? What are the advantages and disadvantages of watching TV? Advantages and disadvantages of living for a very long time, longevity. Define happiness. Define life. What is life? What are the advantages and disadvantages of being a human being? You have to keep coming up with ideas, because without ideas, there's nothing to write about. Step number 1, is it clear? Thumbs up if it's clear. Wake up. Number 2, focus with me. This is my special technique. The way I practice, I do not write a full essay from start to finish when I practice. So what does that mean? Focus with me. I normally classify the essays into types: the opinion essays, discussion essays, problems and solutions essay, and so on and so forth. And then, for each essay type, I practice writing only the introduction for that specific type. So I would only write introductions, only the introduction paragraph for the problems and solutions essay, because it's going to be the same for all of them. I only practice writing the introduction for advantages and disadvantages essay, because it's going to be the same for all of them. I only practice writing the introductions for the discussion essays, because it's going to be the same for all of them. I only have to change words that are related to the topic. If I'm writing letters, I practice writing purpose sentences only. I would practice writing ending sentences only. If I'm writing a report, I would practice writing the overview only. If I'm writing a report, for different types of reports. Why? Because when you keep practicing doing the same thing, it's going to stick in your mind. You have to practice and repeat in a very short amount of time. An introduction, after introduction, after introduction, after introduction, after introduction, it's going to stick in your mind. A conclusion, after a conclusion, after a conclusion, after a conclusion, it's going to stick in your mind. An overview, after an overview, after an overview, it's going to stick in your mind. A purpose sentence, after a purpose sentence, after a purpose sentence, after a purpose sentence, it's going to stick in your mind. Why? Because in the exam, I do not want you to think. I do not want you to think about how to write. I only want you to think about what to write. I like this one. So the template of the introduction, or the template of the purpose sentence, or the template of the overview is going to be like second nature to you. You don't even have to think about it. You only have to change the words and make them related to the topic. So what I would normally do, I would print out. I'm going to share them with you. Let me know after we finish. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, maybe you can download them using the link below. You like this style? Share with you a list of topics, letters, and reports. Like a big booklet. And keep writing introduction, 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 introduction. Yeah? Do not write everything. Because when you keep practicing doing the same thing, it's going to stick in your mind. All right, lovely. And then you have to read band 9 essays, similar to the ones that I normally share with you. Read them, memorize them, and try to mimic them or copy them or imitate them. Why? Because you're going to have like a template in your mind. Oh, I remember when Isa wrote that essay, he said that nowadays, blah, 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 blah. Not only blah, 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 but also blah, blah, blah. The more, the better. Oh. While blah, 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 blah. Do not read random essays from the internet. Find good essays. Ideally, it would be from one specific source. I'll tell you why. Because if you stick to one source, normally this person or this source is going to repeat the same style. You do not want to overload yourself with a lot of different styles, and then you're going to get lost. Yeah? But if you keep reading the same style, you're going to write the same style. You know what I mean? You're going to copy the same style without even noticing. Okay? And this is one of the things that I normally do with my students in my course, having workshops with the students so they can keep repeating, writing the same style. I personally like to write the same style. When I write my introduction, I always write 3 sentences. Always. The general background statement, I paraphrase the question afterwards, and then I would write the thesis statement. Always, all the time. When I have a body paragraph, I will always have a topic sentence. Always. Yeah? So I do not really have to think about how I'm going to be writing my essay. Number 4, after you mimic and imitate high scoring essays, obviously you need someone or something these days to correct your essay. Yeah? But before you ask someone to correct your essay, you have to do it by yourself. Because a lot of times, the mistakes that you make, you already know that these ones are mistakes. But because you're writing in a rush, you're not noticing the mistakes. So you have to learn how to pick up your own mistakes and correct them. Punctuation mistakes, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, and also coherence mistakes or cohesion mistakes. How to link paragraphs to each other or sentences to each other by adding a cohesive device here and there. You have to learn to do this by yourself. And then after you correct yourself, then you have to get feedback from an IELTS instructor. Now, I know you're going to ask me, Isa, I'm going to use ChatGPT. I'll talk about this later, but you have to get at least one of your essays, at least, corrected by not even an English teacher, an IELTS instructor. Because as I told you before, you can write an essay without a single grammatical mistake and you can still get a 5. Yeah? So you have to show it to an IELTS instructor at least once. And I do this with my students on the website. They get at least one essay and one report and one letter corrected. So they know what their level is. Okay? And then you have to mimic exam conditions. Do not write and take your time when you write. Now, there are 2 different stages when you write. The first stage, when you're only focusing on one specific paragraph, do not mimic exam conditions. It's fine because you're refining your style. When you write introductions or when you write conclusions, do not worry about time. But when you want to write an essay or a report or a letter from start to finish, now you have to copy exam conditions. You have to time yourself 20 minutes or 40 minutes. You have to force yourself to finish within time. Not only this, you have to print the official answer sheet if you're doing the paper-based exam. You have to. And it's very important. Why? Because I want you to learn and understand how 250 words or 150 words look like on the answer sheet. Because I do not want you in the exam to go and count the words. There's no time to count the words. You can count the words when you're practicing. So you know, for example, when you're doing the exam, if you reach the third or the fourth or the fifth line of the second sheet, this means it's roughly 250 words, for example. So you know what 250 words or 150 words look like without counting them. That's why it's important. Isa, but I'm not doing the paper-based exam. I'm doing the computer thing. Okay, practice doing this on computer. Do not do it on paper. And then when you do the exam, you do not know what, a letter T, where is delete? It's backspace. Where is it? How to delete? No. Why it's not correcting? Why there's no autocorrect? There's no autocorrect in the exam. Yeah, Minna? There's no autocorrect. Yeah. So if you're doing the computer exam, practice on computer. If you're doing the paper exam, practice on paper. You have to. Do not go and get surprised and shocked in the exam. And time yourself, as I told you, you have to time yourself and you have to count the words. Obviously, you're not going to count the words word by word. You count how many words you have per line and then multiply this by the number of lines that you have. So you can multiply using the calculator. In the exam, there's no calculators. Yeah. I think when you're doing the computer delivered exam, the word count is there. It's easy. But when you're doing the paper based exam, you have to count them yourself. Obviously, you shouldn't be counting them in the exam. That's why you have to practice using the answer sheet. It's very important. That's your favorite part, but you're not going to use it very well, I know. But let me tell you. Because let me tell you something. If you need someone to correct the IELTS essays for you, it's expensive. I know it's expensive. Like if you would ask me, Isa, can you correct it for me? Honestly, I do not have time to correct it for you. It takes a lot of time. That's why I only do it for the enrolled students. You can obviously use AI tools like ChatGPT. However, it's not going to give you an accurate score. So do not rely on the score that you're going to be getting from ChatGPT. But you can use it to correct your grammar, for example, to give you better collocations, for example, to give you topic related vocabulary, for example. It can definitely help you, 100%. But to know what your score is, you need at least to get your essay or your piece of writing marked by an IELTS examiner once or twice. So use it. But one downside when it comes to ChatGPT, every time it would give you different feedback. It's not going to give you consistent feedback. Like it would write the introduction, for example, sometimes using 2 sentences, sometimes using 5 sentences. Depends. Yeah. So that's the difference between getting feedback from a normal human being and from ChatGPT. Yeah. And it says in ChatGPT makes mistakes. Check important information. I'm serious. It does say it does this. It does say this. Yeah. So use it, but do not rely on it. Okay. Writing is the most difficult section of the exam. If you do not practice, you're not going to get a good score. Okay. You need motivation to practice, correct? You need motivation. Yeah. That's why I started to introduce workshops into my courses because I noticed that students do not really write. Even though I would give them one free essay or report marking, they wouldn't do it because they're too lazy to write. But when I'm there with them, turn the camera, all right, now you have 20 minutes, write your report. That's the only time where they write a report. You know what I mean? You need someone to push you to get it done. Otherwise, it's not going to get done. All right, now chapter 7, speaking. Talk with ease, impress, and please. Please means to make people happy, yeah? Please me, this means make me happy, which you never do. Talk with ease, impress, and please. Yeah? What is the breakdown of the speaking chapter? It's the exact same breakdown as the other chapters. We're going to talk about the speaking components, the answer sheet, if there is any, how to manage your time, the popular topics that keep coming up in the speaking exam, question types, how your score is given, and how to study by yourself. If you notice, when I prepare the slides, I like to make them all always consistent, so you always remember them. Yeah? The components of the speaking exam. 3 parts. Yes, Sarah? 3 parts. 1 talk. Ace as you walk. In the speaking exam, we have 3 parts. We have part 1, part 2, and part 3. Let's talk about them. In part 1, this is the part that is the easiest part of the speaking exam. It's like having a casual chat with the examiner. They would ask you personal questions about maybe your life, what you do for work, what you study, your family, your hometown. And when you talk in part 1, you should normally talk in an informal way, like when you are talking to a friend. This part, roughly, is going to have roughly around 8 questions. Obviously, that depends on the length of your answers. It could be 5, could be 10, could be 7, and I will show you examples in the following slides. Part 2, in my personal opinion, is the most difficult part. That's when you're asked to talk non-stop for around 2 minutes. Non-stop. Imagine talking even in your native language for 2 minutes non-stop. You probably never did that in your life. 2 minutes non-stop. It's not formal because they're going to ask you about things that are related to your life, personal things. It's only one question. They're going to give you one question and you have to answer this question in 2 minutes. And if you answer in less than 2 minutes, they're going to ask you follow-up questions. So if your answer is short, they're going to ask you another question. If your answer is too long, they're going to interrupt you. They're going to make you stop. That's the most difficult part, in my opinion. Part 3 is like a discussion. I like to compare it to an essay. You know, when you write an essay in the writing section, where they ask you to write about your opinion or to discuss different points of view, this is very similar to part 3 in the speaking exam. Yeah, it's going to be a discussion. They're going to ask you, oh, what do you think about global warming? You said global warming? What is this? What do you think about globalization? Globalization? What is this, Isa? Huh? It's easy. Everything is easy for you, Ibrahim. And the style here is going to be formal. Like when you're writing an essay, you have to use formal language. In addition, furthermore, not only, but also, if I were, I could. The more, the better. Yeah? Very formal style. And you have to use formal words like terminate instead of end, commence instead of start, purchase instead of buy, address instead of talk. Roughly around 6 questions, more or less. Yeah. 3 parts. Part 1, a casual chat. Part 2, a speech. Part 3, a discussion. Now, let's talk about every single part. And I'm going to show you some examples of the questions that come up in these parts. Now we have part 0. Now part 0, even though it's not mentioned in the previous table, but it's an important part. It's the part that comes before part 1. It is the part that is not assessed. Yeah, that's when they go to the corridor or to the hall or to the room where you are, and they ask for your name. They call your name. Salman. Who's Salman? I'm Salman. And then they would probably shake your hand, ask you for your full name, or maybe for your first name, and where you're from. Yeah. It affects your confidence. It's not assessed, but it's going to affect your confidence. If you feel bad, it's going to affect part 1, 2, and 3. AI these days is getting scary, to be honest. This photo looks like real people. Yeah. Oh, it looks like real people. Look. Part 1. And by the way, they are the same people, but they changed the outfit. Same jeans, but. Okay? Now, part 1. Part 1 is the easiest part. As I told you, they're going to ask you questions about your family, your hometown, your work, your major, your preferences, what you like, what you dislike. So you have to be ready for this part. This is the first part that is officially assessed. They might ask you questions similar to this. Do you work or you study? And if you study, what do you study? For example, if you're studying something related to civil engineering, for example, and you do not know how to describe it, do not go to the exam. If you're a dentist and you are working in a clinic and you're doing fillings for teeth, yeah, or pulling out teeth, and you do not know how to say this in English, do not go to the exam. If you're an English teacher and you cannot speak about what you do in English, big problem. Yeah. Questions that are similar to this. What do you like about your hometown? Do you live with your family? Do you like reading books? Do you like music? Yeah. Do you like museums? Do you like watching TV? Yeah. Do you like to go to the cinema? Yeah. Do you prefer books or films? Could be about anything. Yeah. And I will show you in the coming sub chapters the popular topics that they normally ask you about. And just a hint, the topics are very similar to the writing topics. That's why preparing for writing prepares you for speaking, especially when it comes to generating ideas, because the topics are the same. Part 2. Obviously, you're not going to speak in front of a group of people, but this image is just to show you that you're going to be talking non-stop. It's very similar to delivering a presentation. The examiner is going to give you a topic on a piece of paper, and it's going to look like this. Describe a hotel that you know. Describe a restaurant that you like. Describe a museum that you went to. Describe a party that you enjoyed. Describe a cousin or a family member that you admire. It's always about describing something or someone. And the examiner is going to give you 1 minute to plan your answer and to take notes on a piece of paper. 1 minute. They're going to time it for you. You have to take notes to plan your answer and to address all these points. And then after you take the notes on that piece of paper, they're going to give you 2 minutes to speak non-stop. Again, non-stop. Again, non-stop. Again, non-stop. And I will show you model answers in the coming slides on how to answer it properly. Yeah? But it's very challenging. Without practice, you wouldn't be able to answer it properly. Because a lot of students, if they want to answer this question, they can answer it in one sentence. You want me to describe a hotel that I know? Where this hotel is, it was in Thailand. What this hotel looks like, it's very big. What facilities this hotel has? Facilities? What does that mean? Facilities. Yeah. So you have to be familiar with the words. You have to plan properly and you have to expand on your answer. Yeah, Tuqa, I know the answer, but I'm just pretending that I'm one of the students. Yeah. Tuqa is helping me. She's telling me, Isa, facilities means services. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't know. But imagine if you don't know the word facilities. You're gonna look bad. Isa, I don't know the word hotel. No, if you don't know the word hotel, it's a big problem. No. If you can understand me, this means you know the word hotel. He said, but I'm French educated. We say hotel. Okay, it's the same thing. Ali is saying, what if we do not have any idea about the thing that they have asked us about? Can we say, I didn't visit this place, for example? No, you have to make up a story. That's why you have to learn the art of lying. In other words, making up stuff. Yeah? Because imagine if I gave you this piece of paper that is about a hotel. Sorry, examiner. I've never been to a hotel. Okay, no problem. Let me give you another question. Describe a restaurant. Sorry, examiner. I've never been to a restaurant. Okay, let me give you another thing. Describe a family member. Sorry, guys. I'm an orphan. I don't have family. Okay. Describe a book. I don't read books. Okay, get out of the room. This is what they're going to tell you. You know what I mean? That's why they do not give you the option to say no. Huh? Can you see this door? All right, here's the door. They will show you the door directly. Yeah? So that's why you have to learn the art of lying. Is it clear? That's why you have to practice. If you don't practice, you wouldn't know what to tell the examiner. And trust me, it's going to affect your score drastically. Yeah? Describe a museum that you went to. Museum. Isa, are you serious? What sort of museums? I've never been to a museum in my life. Okay, but describe a museum. Isa, can I describe a restaurant instead of a museum? No. Yeah, because this means you're memorizing answers. This means you do not know words and phrases that are related to that specific topic. That's why you're describing something else. That's why you have to answer the question. Clear? You remember when I told you about generating ideas in writing? The same thing applies to speaking. Because let me tell you something. Let's be honest here. Because, I love you. I talk to you like a brother. Yeah? Even in your native language. If I tell you to describe a museum, you wouldn't know. Let's be honest. You wouldn't know. So the problem is not the language. The problem is having ideas. That's why you have to have ideas. You have to generate ideas for the exam. So do not feel bad. Because we all know that you are a fluent Arabic speaker. We know. But not about all the topics. Yeah. So do not feel bad. But still feel bad at the same time. Yeah. You have to feel bad to a certain degree. Okay. Part 3. Minna is saying, they asked me to write about the museum in my essay. See, I told you, Ali. Essays and speaking have very similar topics. Okay, write about a museum. Museum. The only word that we know about museums is the word museums. Correct? No ideas about museums. What ideas do you have? Correct? So you have to educate yourself. You have to generate ideas. All right, part 3. Now, part 3 is my favorite part. Why? Because it is the essay of speaking. You know when you write an essay in writing? If you were to speak the essay, that would be part 3 in speaking. Because they're going to ask you questions about your opinion. They're going to ask you to discuss people's opinions, deep questions that are not personal. They're going to tell you to speak about your opinion about a specific topic in general. They're not going to ask you about your personal experience. Like they're not going to tell you, tell me about your family. Tell me about your hometown. Tell me about your hobbies. No. They're going to tell you, what do you think is important when it comes to picking up a hotel? See? Your opinion about an abstract topic. Why do you think some people like staying in a hotel? So it's not personal. It's like a discussion. It's like having an essay, and they would ask you, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of staying in a hotel compared to holiday homes or Airbnb. Yeah? Do you think staying in a luxury hotel is worth it? They're asking you about your opinion. Do you think working in a hotel is good for your career? And so on and so forth. These ones are just sample questions. Yeah? So part 3 is going to be about questions that are related to task 2. For example, if in task 2 they ask you about describing a hotel that you went to, part 3 is going to be about tourism, maybe, or traveling, or staying in a hotel. If in part 2 they ask you to describe a restaurant, for example, part 3 would be about dining in restaurants in general. You know what I mean? It's going to be related to part 2, but it's going to be a discussion. So the examiner is going to ask you about your opinion, and it's going to ask you to justify your opinion. Okay? And it's going to be a very formal part, very similar to writing an essay. You have to structure it properly, give it an introduction, like a body or a main answer, and then a conclusion. You should use cohesive devices, formal words. Yeah? It's a discussion. So we have 3 parts. Part 1 is a casual chat, informal. Part 2, a talk, informal. Part 3, a discussion, formal. Now the answer sheet. Notes to keep while you speak. Now, you're going to tell me, Isa, speaking? Does speaking have an answer sheet? No, there's no answer sheet. Okay, Isa, why are you including this chapter? Because I like to make things consistent in the course. So I arrange ideas in your lovely, beautiful head. Isa, I never had this compliment before. Lovely head. Yeah. Giving you good compliments, new, exclusive. Okay? So there's no answer sheet in the speaking exam. Can you see this photo? See this radio looking recorder? Yeah? Can you see this device? That looks like a iPod. Who knows what an iPod is? If you're born in the 80s and the 90s, raise your hand. iPod, not iPad, not AirPods. iPod. Yeah? Looks like an iPod. Yeah? Google it if you do not know it. Yeah? Isa was born in 2005. I'm 20. 2005 and 20. Can you believe it, Dalal? 2005, 20. Feels like yesterday. Okay? But it's not really an iPod. They're going to record your answer. So there's no answer sheet, obviously, because you're not going to write anything. But the examiner is going to record your answer. Why are they going to record your answer? Because some annoying students, sometimes, to be honest, they ask for a reassessment. They would get a 5, and they think after the reassessment, they're going to get a 7. You know what I mean? So that's why they record it. So if you ask for a reassessment, they would still give you a 5. It's very unlikely to change the score when you do a reassessment. Yeah. Or you're probably going to get half a band extra, maybe. So do not ask for it. It's just a waste of money because you have to pay for it. That's why they record your answer. They record your answer not to listen to it after you finish. You know why? Because they're going to give you the score during your exam. The examiner is going to give you the score during the exam. So they just record it, yeah, just to keep it for their own record. Yeah? While you are talking, the examiner is going to take notes for them to assess your speaking skills. So do not worry. So if they're not maintaining eye contact with you, it's okay. They're not disrespecting you. I know that you deserve a lot of respect. That's why I keep looking at you in the eye, even though you never look at me in the eye. But the examiner, most of the time, is just going to ignore you like you're nothing. No. No, I'm joking. They respect you, but they're busy. They're taking notes. So do not take it personal. Do not let that affect you, yeah? Okay? In part 2, they're going to give you a piece of paper where you are allowed to take notes. So take notes. You do not really have to, but you can. Because you only have 1 minute. Yeah? This is when you generate ideas. Up until now, was it clear? Tuqa is saying, no one cares about us, as you always tell us. Yeah, it's a fact. No one cares about me either. No one likes my videos on YouTube, for example. So this is a proof that no one cares about me. So it's okay. But you should care about yourself. This is how you look at it. All right, time management now. Think, then say. Don't delay. Wow. I'm a poet now. Listen. Think, then say. Don't delay. He said, what does that mean? I'll tell you. I'll tell you how to manage your time in the speaking exam. Yeah, all my slogans rhyme, by the way. He said, what does rhyme mean? Rhyme means they sound the same, like the ending of words, they sound similar. Asma, can you pay attention? Asma doesn't like to joke that much. She always has this poker face. That's why I do not like to joke that much with her. Even Ibrahim. But Ibrahim, he is always serious, but when you speak to him, he laughs. Look, now he's gonna laugh. Ibrahim, laugh. He's laughing now. All right. Part one is roughly going to be around 5 minutes. As I told you, roughly around 8 questions. Roughly, yeah? Roughly. This sign means roughly, yeah? Part two, around 3 minutes. They're going to ask you to speak for 2 minutes, and they're going to give you 1 minute to prepare. So roughly 3 minutes. Part three is roughly 5 minutes, yeah? Because it's a discussion between you and the examiner. It has roughly around 6 questions. So the total speaking time is 13 to 15 minutes, give or take. 15 minutes or 13 minutes are going to decide your future. Can you believe this? Only 13 minutes. Okay, how to manage your time during the speaking section. Now, in the speaking section, honestly, you're not going to manage the time. The time is going to manage you. Because it's not up to you. It's up to the examiner. Yeah? When you speak too much, the examiner is going to interrupt you. Because you cannot just talk. Because no one cares about what you say if you exceed the time. They do care about you, but only for a specific amount of time. If you exceed this specific amount of time, they will have to interrupt you. In other words, they're going to force you to stop. Okay? Mena is saying they stopped us. Yeah, Mena, because I stop you all the time when you talk, because you never stop talking. So I feel the examiner. You never stop talking, mashallah. You're very fluent. Yeah, that's why I got 5.5. Imagine, imagine if your level is 8 and above. No one can stop you. Yeah. See? Learn from Mena. Yeah. So they stopped her. All right. So if you speak for too much, you're going to be interrupted. And if you speak too little, they're going to ask you follow-up questions. For example, in part two, if you do not speak for 2 minutes, they will ask you a follow-up question to continue talking. This bullet point is related to this slogan. Think, then say, don't delay. Think, but don't delay. So look at this bullet point. Take pauses. So when you talk, take your time to a certain extent. Pause, think, and then speak. But don't pause for 20 seconds. Pause for 2 to 5 seconds, for example, or even 3 seconds. Yeah? So don't be in a rush. Take your time. Plan your ideas in your head, your lovely, beautiful head, and then talk. You have to plan your ideas before you talk, especially when you're angry or when you're stressed. Yeah? Same thing applies to the IELTS exam. Plan your ideas and then say them. Even now, when I'm talking to you, I take pauses when I talk to you. Because if I don't take pauses, I do make mistakes. That's why I take my time when I talk. And I do not talk too much. Otherwise, they would interrupt me, like what they did with one of our friends, whose name is Menna. That's why it's very important to practice under exam conditions. Time your responses when you practice. Why? Because you should know how 2 minutes feel like, how 13 to 15 minutes feel like, what a long response feels like in terms of time, what a short response feels like in terms of time. So you have to practice and time your responses. Is it clear? Not clear? Is it as clear as crystal or as clear as mud? As clear as mud. Very clear. Yeah, but this means it's not clear. Not clear? Okay. The other one, Isa. As clear as crystal. Okay. Omar is saying as clear as the ocean. Which ocean? Depends. Yeah? Depends on the ocean. You said the Pacific Ocean. Okay. This means it's not clear. All right. Time management. Clear. Oh, popular topics. Talk it through. Topics for you. Omar. It's also rhyming. Yeah? Talk it through. Like, speak about it. Topics for you. Because I love you. Wow, I like this one. Also rhymes. Because it's the Valentine's Day after 3 days. And no one is going to get you a gift. So this is the gift for you. Okay? Talk it through. Topics only for you to make it more special. Yeah, Isa, I like this one even more. This guy looks like a real person. This is AI generated. Can you believe this, Dalal? That's scary. They're generating videos these days. Not just photos, videos. You can take a photo of your face from different angles and they will make a video of you. So maybe in the future, I'm not going to teach you. I'll take photos of myself, record my audio, and then I will train my AI me to teach you. Yeah. So I do not really have to deal with you anymore. You got it? And this is not me, by the way. I'm not the real Isa. Imagine. Yeah. Okay. The topics in the speaking exam are the exact same topics for the writing exam. The exact same topics that you're going to be training yourself for the writing section. That's why when you're practicing generating ideas for the writing, you're technically killing two birds with one stone. You're practicing speaking and writing. You got it? So the same topics. Yeah? I'm thinking about creating like classes similar to this, only for speaking. And on each session, we discuss one topic, for example. Show you how it's done. Man, are you shaking your head? Keep shaking your head, no problem. What are you drinking? Yansun? Okay. Now, question types. Now it's important. From yes to why. Ace every, try. From yes. Yes means yes or no questions. Why means WH questions. Ace means do a very good job in every try. From yes to why, ace every try. Thank you, Asma. Appreciate it. So what are the question types in the speaking exam? Yes and why, Isa? An ace every try? We have yes or no questions. These are the questions that would be answered by yes or no. But if you answer by yes or no only, you're going to get a 0. Do you like going to the cinema? Yes. 0. Do you like reading books? Yes. But sometimes, no. 000. Yeah. So when they ask you a yes or no question, you have to give the answer with an explanation or with an example or with both. Okay? Do not just say yes or no. Do you enjoy traveling? Yes. Oh, 9 out of 9. He loves traveling. Okay, now you can leave. Thank you. This is not going to happen in the exam. You should say, that's an interesting question. Yes, I do love traveling. However, sometimes I prefer not to travel by plane because I'm afraid of heights. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm a big fan of traveling. Yeah? So you have to give an answer between 1 to 2 sentences when you're asked such a question. Yeah? Is music important in your life? No. But sometimes, yes. Traveling. Okay. Tuqa is commenting on something. Let's teach everyone now. Tuqa is saying Isa traveling is with double L. The word traveling has double L. Tuqa, we have 2 different types of spelling. American and British. The American spelling has 1 L. British spelling has 2 L's. You don't believe me? Let me show you. Good question, Tuqa. I like it. You make everyone learn. Can you see the screen? Okay. See, traveling, US, usually traveling, 1 L. Yeah? See? US, 1 L. Yeah, this is the American way of spelling. Yeah? You convinced now, Tuqa? You believe me? Good. Oh, yeah, it's clapping for me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh. From yes to why, ace every try. Is music important in your life? Yes. But sometimes, no. You should say yes and why. Or you should mention an example. How to answer these questions? I will show you sample answers in the coming slides. Okay? But this is me showing you that these are yes or no questions. Why am I classifying the question types? Because this is something that I recently introduced in my courses. Previously, I was not really classifying the question types into different types. But now I classified them because each question type is answered using a specific structure that I like, using a specific tense that I like, using certain phrases and collocations that I like. He said, why do you keep winking? Because I like. Okay. Second question type, the WH questions. When they ask you, what do you do in your free time apart from sleeping and eating and watching TV? WH. For example, if they ask you, what do you do in your free time? You cannot say, free time? Yes. But sometimes, no. You cannot do this, Minna. That's why you get the 5. Yeah. So when you're asked a WH question, you answer it in a different way compared to the yes or no question. Why do you think people enjoy watching movies? Yes. Sometimes no. You have to mention reasons. And obviously, how is part of the WH words, even though it's not WH. So what, when, why, who, whom, how. These are the WH words. How is not WH, but it's kind of classified as part of him. Yeah. They gave her the citizenship to become part of the WH family. Yeah. Now look at this question type. Aya, can you stop playing with your phone? And Sarah, can you stop playing with your kids? Focus with me, because when you, Ibrahim, can you stop moving around? Because you're distracting me. Okay, Sarah, I believe you. Yeah, because when you move a lot, I cannot focus. Toqa, please focus. Yeah, pretend that you're in a class. Yeah, do you need shisha? Because Aya, she's covering herself with a blanket. Watching Netflix. It's a real class. Look at Sarah now. Yeah. Take advantage of me and the community that we have here to take it seriously. Because trust me, by yourself, you're not going to study. I know, and you know. So do not cover yourself with a blanket. He said, but I live in Jordan and there is no oil in the dafaya. I have to cover myself. January. All right, back to the slide. See, you keep distracting me. See, you're wasting our time. Everyone is upset now because of you covering yourself with the blanket. All right. The third question type is what I call the narrative questions. Narrative, or when you narrate something, this means you're telling a story. You're describing something in a storytelling style. So the way you answer this question is very different to the way you would answer the first two question types. They would ask you, especially in part 2, to describe something and to speak or to talk about a story about this thing. Like describe a website that you've bought something from. Describe someone you know who started a business. He said, but I don't know anyone who started a business. You have to describe. These are the only 3 main categories under which all the speaking questions fall. Okay? Now we cover the question types and then we go to bed. Okay? So, as I told you, we have 3 different question types: yes and no questions, WH questions, and narrative questions. These 3 different question types, 3, they are also divided into different question types. Yeah? So now we have what I call time-based questions. So the time-based questions could be yes and no questions. They could be narrative questions. They could be WH questions. So now this is another classification of the questions. So I'm classifying the questions now based on the time, aka the tense that you should use to answer the question. And this is very important. When you're asked a question, pay attention to the tense that is used in the question. When they ask you about a past experience, an example, describe a memorable holiday you had. So if you notice, this is a narrative question based on the previous slide, correct? Look here, because you're sleeping. Look at the cursor. Describe. Yeah? So they're asking you to talk about a story. But at the same time, when it comes to the time-based classification, it is classified as a past experience question. They want you to talk about something that happened to you in the past. Pay attention to the word had. What tense is this? Future or present? Let me know. Had. Is it future or present simple? Or present perfect? Present continuous? Future perfect? Present perfect? Past perfect? Minna, you never get any kind of correct answer. All your answers are wrong. This is past simple. Yeah? Past simple. So they want you to use the past tense. When did you last receive a gift? Isa, I never received a gift in my life. Okay. But you have to make up something. Yeah? What was it? What was it? I just told you I never received a gift in my life. Yeah, but pretend that you received a gift. Yeah? So they're asking you using did. What tense is did? Is it future or present? Let me know. Correct. Past simple. Past simple. Okay? So when you are asked a question by the examiner, you have to analyze the tense that they're using and use that tense in your answer. Isa, I have a question. What is your question? So does that mean if they ask me a question similar to the first question here, describe a holiday you had, does that mean I'm only allowed to use the past simple? No. You can use all the past tenses. We have 4 past tenses. We have past simple, past perfect, past continuous, past perfect continuous. In English, we have 12 tenses, if you do not know. Tuqa, do you know this? Or you only know the double L in traveling? Okay. So when they ask you to talk about the past, the more tenses that you use that are related to the past, the higher the score that you're going to get. Okay. What about questions that are related to your habits or to your routine, aka questions related to the present tense? How often do you exercise? Present. What kind of food do you usually eat? See, the keywords here are often and usually. This means these ones are habits. This means you have to use the present tenses. Could be present simple, present perfect, present continuous, present perfect continuous. You can mix them up based on the sentence that you're using. Future questions. What are your plans for the weekend? The weekend means the coming days. Yeah? For the coming weekend, technically. Even though there's not a very clear keyword that you should be using the future simple or the future tense, but the weekend in this case means in the coming weekend. So you have to use the future tenses. How do you think technology will change in the future? Will and future. Yeah. So you have to pay attention to the tense in the question. And look at the photo. The one in the middle is the present. The one on the left side represents the past. And the one on the right side is you when you are successful in your 60s. Yeah? Believe to achieve. Now, based on the reality, is it real? Is it not real? We have two question types because the structure and the tense that you're going to be using depends on how real the situation is. When they ask you to describe something that is real, for example, describe a restaurant. This is a narrative question because you have to tell like a story. And at the same time, you have to use certain adjectives to describe that restaurant in the past tense, obviously, because you enjoyed going to. The questions in the speaking can be classified based on so many different criteria. The way they are asked, the tense, and whether they are real or unreal. So you have to use a lot of adjectives here in the past tense. How does your dream house look like? If you do not know a lot of adjectives and adverbs to describe places, you're not going to be able to get a good score. Sometimes they would ask you to describe a family member you admire. So you should know how to describe their personality. You have to use personality adjectives. Sometimes they would ask you to describe their appearance. So you have to use appearance adjectives. They have curly hair, they have fair skin, they have facial hair. A lot of adjectives that you should use. And if you do not use them, you're not going to get a good score. Because this is what the examiner is looking for. You got it up until now? So here we're focusing on the adjectives that we're using, how we describe a certain thing. But what if it's unreal, hypothetical situations? And this is very popular in the IELTS, especially in part 3. Could be even part 1. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go? This is part 1. Here, they want you to use the second conditional. Conditional means if. You know, if you study, you will succeed. This is the first conditional. If you studied in the past, you would succeed. Second conditional. The third conditional, if you had studied, you would have succeeded. This is the third conditional. In this case, they want you to use the second conditional. And it's used to describe an imaginary situation, unreal situation. Like, if I won $1 million, I would travel to China, whatever. Imaginary situation. So if you do not use it here, you're not going to get a good score. It's something unreal, hypothetical. What would you do if you won the lottery? I would buy a Lamborghini, like this photo, for example. So if you don't say I would, you will get a 0 because this is a real situation, not hypothetical anymore. Look at this question type. When they ask you to decide between two things, the two-sided questions, we have what we call preference questions. Do you prefer this or that? So the language that you use here is specific. I prefer this over this. I would rather do this. I lean towards this. So the language that we're using is going to decide your mark. Isa, what is this language? Obviously, because this is a short course, I cannot list all the language. You know what I mean? Otherwise, we're not going to finish. That's why we do have comprehensive courses that last for more than 50 hours and extra workshops. Different questions. It's very similar to the previous one, but look here, they're asking you to compare between two things. They're not asking you for your preference. They're asking you to compare between two things. How is the weather in your country different from the other countries? Do you think the older generations had a better quality of life compared to the younger generations? See, they're asking you to compare between two things. So the language that you use here is different. You have to use what we call comparative language or superlative language. Like when you say, this is longer than this, or this is more important than this. When you're comparing two things to each other, this is what we call comparative language or superlative language. This is the highest. This is the lowest compared to the blah, blah, blah. So this is the language that the examiner is looking for. Last slide for today, so relax. This is like a Greek philosopher. Because they're asking the philosopher deep questions. So what does that mean? These are the questions when they ask you about your opinion. He said, but no one cares about my opinion. Well, who told you this? He said, you told me. No, I told you this in the academic report, in certain question types. But when they do ask you about your opinion, they do care about your opinion. See? You're not nothing. You are something. Do you think happiness is a choice? Yeah, you got it? So they do ask you about your opinion. In your opinion, what makes a good friend? Yeah, they're asking you abstract questions. Yeah, all of these ones. So the language the examiner would like to hear in this case is the language related to expressing your opinion. In my opinion, blah, blah, blah. Even though some people think that, I do believe, blah, blah, blah. In my point of view, blah, blah, blah. Not only do I believe in this, but I also support this idea. Sometimes your opinion does make a difference. All right. This is the end of this class. Do you have questions? No questions? This means you understood everything, man. This means you're going to go and get a 9. If you don't have questions, this means you're going to get a 9.